Hercule Poirot, The Murmur by the Reeds. Part 1, The Invitation to Stillwater Hall. The Morning Post arrived at Whitehaven Mansions precisely at 9 o'clock. Hercule Poirot, ever punctual, had already completed his breakfast, 2 slices of toast cut with geometrical precision, a single boiled egg, and a small cup of steaming chocolate. His mustaches were, as always, immaculate, his patent leather shoes gleamed like obsidian. When the envelope arrived, grey and sealed with wax, he regarded it with interest rather than surprise. An invitation, perhaps, he murmured, holding it to the light. But from whom? He slit the envelope delicately. The paper was heavy, expensive, the sort favoured by the English gentry. The handwriting, however, was hurried, nervous. Monsieur Poirot. I am in most urgent need of your assistance. A matter of death, or the fear of it, presses upon my mind. I dare not confide in the police. I beg you to come to Stillwater Hall, in the county of Norfolk. Time is of the essence. You will find your expenses amply rewarded. Yours sincerely, Lady Arabella Fenton. Poirot read the signature twice, then leaned back in his chair. Lady Arabella Fenton. I have heard that name, have I not? Captain Hastings, lounging by the window with the day's paper, looked up. Good heavens, yes. Her husband died mysteriously a few years ago, fell from a cliff, I think. There was some talk of foul play, but it was all hushed up. A beautiful woman, by all accounts. Rather eccentric. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Then it seems, mon ami, we are to take a little trip to the country. The air of Norfolk will do us good, and perhaps, he tapped the letter gently, perhaps, it will bring us an enigma worthy of the little grey cells. Chapter 1, The Road to Stillwater. The train to Norfolk cut through a countryside of quiet villages, flat meadows, and long stretches of reed-lined rivers. The air carried the scent of damp earth and salt. Hastings, gazing from the window, was uncharacteristically quiet. It's strange, he said at last. The name, Stillwater Hall, gives one an odd feeling. Peaceful, yet. Yet it suggests that the water is deep, said Poirot. Still water hides many secrets, mon ami. A chauffeur awaited them at the small rural station of Reedham. The car, a dark Bentley, bore the crest of the Fenton family, a silver heron rising from reeds. As they drove through the marshland, the landscape seemed to whisper. The tall reeds swayed in the breeze, creating a soft murmuring sound like half-heard voices. Hastings shivered. Good heavens, that sound. It's like people talking. Poirot smiled faintly. The reeds speak, perhaps, but one must listen closely to know what they say. Chapter 2, Stillwater Hall. Stillwater Hall stood on a small rise overlooking the marshes. It was a grand old estate of grey stone and ivy, its windows glinting like cold eyes. At its heart was a small lake, bordered by willows and reeds that whispered with every wind. Lady Arabella Fenton awaited them in the great hall. She was tall, elegant, and pale, with a beauty that seemed carved from marble. Her voice trembled slightly when she spoke. Monsieur Poirot, I cannot tell you what relief your coming brings me. For 3 nights, I have not slept. There are noises by the lake at night. Murmurs, like voices carried on the wind. And 2 days ago, my maid swore she saw a man, standing among the reeds. Hastings frowned. Perhaps just a poacher or trespasser. But Lady Arabella shook her head. No, Captain Hastings. The man she described, he is dead. My husband, Henry Fenton, who fell from the cliffs at Whitby 4 years ago. There was silence. Poirot regarded her keenly. You are sure of what you say, madam? I am not sure of anything any more, she whispered. But I know what I heard, and what I saw. And I know someone wishes me harm. Poirot inclined his head gravely. Then we shall see, Lady Arabella. We shall listen to what the reeds whisper. Chapter 3, The Guests of Stillwater Hall. That evening, as dusk fell over the marshes, Poirot and Hastings dined with the household. Lady Arabella presided at the head of the long oak table. Beside her sat her cousin, Charles Fenton, a man in his 30s with the sharp features and restless energy of one accustomed to gambling and secrets. Opposite him was Dr. Lydia March, the family physician, composed and intelligent. Also present were Reverend Blake, the local vicar, a gentleman with weary eyes, and Miss Edna Cray, Lady Arabella's maid, whose hands trembled when she poured the wine. The conversation was polite but strained. Everyone seemed to watch everyone else. Poirot, ever observant, noted every glance, every hesitation. At length, Lady Arabella rose. "After dinner, I will show you the lake, Monsieur Poirot. It is there that all the trouble began." Chapter 4, The Murmur by the Lake. The moon rose pale and round above Stillwater. The reeds glimmered silver in the faint light, and the air was thick with the sound, that strange, haunting murmur. Lady Arabella led them down the path. "It comes from there," she whispered, pointing to the far edge of the lake where the reeds grew thickest. Poirot stood still, listening. For a moment, there was nothing but wind, and then, faintly, a whisper, "Arabella." Hastings started. "Did you hear that?" Poirot raised a hand for silence. Again it came, softer, drawn out by the rustle of the reeds. "Arabella." Lady Arabella swayed. "That voice, it's his voice." "Henry's." Poirot guided her gently back toward the path. "Courage, madam. The dead do not speak. But someone, perhaps, would have you believe they do." From the shadows near the water, a figure moved. Hastings caught a glimpse of a man's shape, tall, coat flapping in the wind, before it vanished into the darkness. "Good Lord, Poirot," he shouted. "There, by the willows." But when they reached the spot, there was nothing. Only the reeds whispering, the moonlight trembling upon the surface of the still lake. Chapter 5, The Clue in the Study. Later that night, Poirot explored the house alone. He found the study, Henry Fenton's old room, preserved as it had been on the day of his death. Dust lay thick upon the desk, except where a recent hand had moved something. Poirot bent low, examining the surface. A faint mark remained where a small picture frame had stood. Yet no such frame was now present. "Curious," he murmured. Someone wished to remove a memory, or perhaps, a reminder. On the desk lay a half-burned letter. Poirot smoothed it carefully. The ink was smudged but legible. "Cannot hide it forever. The marshes will tell." He pocketed the fragment delicately. "The marshes will tell," he repeated softly. "Yes, they always do." Chapter 6, Nightfall and a Cry. Midnight came with a storm. Wind lashed the lake, the reeds hissed like serpents, and thunder rolled above the moor. Poirot stood by his window, watching the lightning flash across the water. Then came the scream, sharp, human, terrified. Hastings burst into his room. "Poirot." It came from the east wing. They ran through the corridors. At the far end, near the servants' quarters, they found Miss Edna Cray collapsed against the wall, sobbing. "It was him," she gasped. "By the reeds, the man. I saw him again." Poirot crouched beside her. "Calm yourself, mademoiselle. You saw him clearly?" "Yes, yes, the same coat, the same hat. He looked at me, and then," she pointed toward the French doors that opened onto the gardens, "he vanished." Poirot straightened, his eyes glinting. "Then, Hastings, we must see if the reeds whisper again tonight." They stepped out into the storm. The path was slick with rain, the reeds thrashing wildly. Yet even through the tempest, Poirot's sharp eyes caught something, footprints. Fresh, leading from the terrace toward the lake. And there, half submerged in the mud, gleamed a silver cufflink, engraved with the letter F. Poirot bent to pick it up. F for Fenton, he murmured. Or perhaps, for falsity. He looked toward the dark water, the reeds bending like conspirators. The truth is here, Hastings, he said quietly. It whispers, but we must learn to listen. Part 2, The Shadows Among the Reeds. The morning after the storm dawned heavy and grey over Stillwater Hall, as if the sky itself was reluctant to witness what would unfold in the marshes below. The air was damp and thick, laden with the scent of wet earth, reeds, and the faint salt tang from the distant river. The wind whispered in the tall stalks, producing a soft, eerie murmur, as though the marsh itself were alive with secrets. Every blade of grass, every rustling reed seemed to lean toward the hall, carrying invisible messages only the most perceptive eye could interpret. Hercule Poirot sat at the breakfast table, his posture immaculate, his mustaches meticulously groomed, and his grey eyes gleaming with intense focus. Hastings joined him, his face still pale from the shock of last night's mysterious events. Hastings, Poirot began, stirring his tea deliberately, the reeds, mon ami, they speak. One must listen not only with ears but with the mind. They whisper truths hidden by fear, by human deceit, by the dark designs of men. Hastings shivered. I thought I saw a man, Poirot. By the reeds, standing there, then he vanished. I can't get it out of my mind. Poirot nodded. Exactment. Your senses were not deceiving you, but you must understand, it is not the dead who haunt this place. It is the living who wish to conceal and to frighten. Chapter 1, Lady Arabella's Confession. After breakfast, Lady Arabella requested to see Poirot privately. She led him to the drawing room, where the storm outside had left the room shadowed and quiet. Her face was pale, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Monsieur Poirot, she whispered, I am afraid. Every night, I hear the voice, calling my name from the reeds. It is Henry's voice, my late husband. I cannot sleep. I cannot think. And sometimes I feel eyes upon me. Watching. Poirot inclined his head, studying her with calm precision. Madam, the dead do not speak. It is the living who create such illusions. But your fear is real, and someone wishes to exploit it. We must find the origin of this deception. Tell me, among your friends and family, who could wish you harm? Lady Arabella hesitated, glancing at the windows facing the marsh. I do not know. All seem polite, restrained, yet I feel an undercurrent of tension. I can feel it, Monsieur Poirot. Something is being hidden from me, something dreadful. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Indeed. The human heart hides many things, madam. Envy, ambition, revenge, all may walk hidden in plain sight. We shall uncover them. Chapter 2, Interviews with the Household. Poirot began with Charles Fenton, Lady Arabella's cousin. Charles was a man of restless energy, sharp features, and subtle menace. In the dim light of the library, Poirot's penetrating gaze examined every twitch of Charles's hands, every hesitation. Charles, mon ami, Poirot began softly, were you by the lake last night? Charles laughed nervously. Of course not. I was in my room reading. I do not wander among the marshes at night. Poirot leaned forward. Yet you are a man of games, n'est-ce pas? Gambling, deception, secrets, do these not tempt you? Charles flushed and looked away. I fail to see the relevance. Human nature is rarely as it seems, Poirot replied calmly. The reeds conceal intentions, desires, and sometimes, guilt. We must observe carefully. Next was Dr. Lydia March, who maintained an air of calm composure. Yet Poirot detected the slightest tension in her eyes. Doctor, Poirot said casually, you have access to substances capable of causing harm. Have you walked the grounds at night? Occasionally, she admitted. For reflection. The marshes are peaceful. I did not see anyone. Poirot smiled faintly. Curious. The reeds whisper even to those absent. Perhaps they speak to the living, revealing truths hidden beneath polite facades. Chapter 3, Discoveries in the Study. Poirot spent the afternoon in Henry Fenton's study. The room was preserved as though awaiting his return. Dust covered the furniture, but the desk bore signs of recent disturbance. Poirot's sharp eyes noticed the empty space where a picture frame had been moved and a faint scent of unfamiliar lavender lingering in the air. He found an envelope hidden under other papers, with copperplate initials HF inside were letters from Henry Fenton to an unknown correspondent, speaking of a secret inheritance, a hidden property, and veiled threats. One line chilled Poirot. If the truth is discovered, lives will be lost. I fear the reeds will witness blood before silence returns. Poirot folded the letter carefully. Hastings, the danger is far greater than we imagined. Someone is determined to keep the past buried, but the marshes and the reeds conceal more than shadows. They conceal witnesses, messages, and intentions. Chapter 4, Nightfall by the Lake. That night, Poirot insisted on walking the grounds. Lanterns in hand, he and Hastings approached the lake. The wind rustled the reeds violently, carrying an eerie murmur across the still water. The moon, partially obscured by clouds, cast moving shadows that seemed alive. Suddenly, a shrill cry cut through the night. Poirot froze. Hastings! Listen! Miss Edna Cray appeared from the reeds, soaked and terrified. It's him. By the lake. I saw him again. Poirot bent to examine the ground. Footprints, fresh and uneven, led into the marsh. The culprit wishes to be observed yet remain hidden. Observe carefully, Hastings. Every criminal leaves a trace. Every movement is a clue. Poirot's eyes scanned the shadows. The reeds whisper, yes, but they also conceal. It is time we discover who is behind this illusion. Chapter 5, Hidden Letters and Secrets. In the hours that followed, Poirot discovered a hidden alcove along the reeds where a bundle of papers had been left. Carefully, he unwrapped them. They were letters, correspondence between Henry Fenton and a mysterious figure, discussing the secret inheritance, disputes over property, and warnings that revelation would bring disaster. One letter ended ominously. The truth cannot remain hidden forever. Those who seek it will find danger. The reeds will witness blood before silence returns. Poirot tucked the papers into his coat pocket. Hastings, observe carefully. The reeds conceal more than whispers, they conceal ambitions, fears, and intentions of deadly consequence. Chapter 6, Dinner Tensions. Dinner that evening was tense. Each member of the household seemed to observe the others with subtle suspicion. Charles Fenton drummed his fingers restlessly. Dr. Lydia March's eyes narrowed slightly at every comment. Lady Arabella's hands clutched her napkin tightly. Reverend Blake whispered under his breath, a quiet prayer, and Miss Edna Cray avoided all eyes, her hands shaking slightly. Poirot noted every detail. He had already begun to deduce the connections, the rivalries, the secret motives. And as the dinner concluded, a loud crash from the east wing startled everyone. A vase lay shattered on the floor, and a small silver locket had fallen among the shards. Inside was a miniature portrait of Henry Fenton, and behind him, a shadowy figure Poirot did not recognize. The plot thickens, Poirot murmured. Someone is guiding us toward revelation, and danger. Part 3, The Secrets Beneath the Reeds. The dawn rose reluctantly over Stillwater Hall, casting a pale, muted light over the marshes. The aftermath of the previous storm left the ground sodden, the reeds bowing under the weight of rain. Each stalk quivered as if in anticipation, whispering their secrets to anyone who might listen carefully enough. Poirot, ever meticulous, surveyed the hall from the drawing-room window, his sharp grey eyes scanning the distant lake, the twisting pathways, and the shadows among the reeds. Hastings, still looking weary, joined him. It's all very unsettling, Poirot. I can't help thinking, last night, something almost touched me in the reeds. Something alive. Poirot nodded, stirring his tea with deliberate precision. Ah, Hastings, it is precisely this feeling, the thrill of the unknown, the murmur of hidden intentions, which separates the merely curious from the truly observant. Last night was a message, and tonight, we shall seek the messenger. Chapter 1, Morning Observations. The household gathered for breakfast in tense silence. Lady Arabella moved with an anxious grace, her eyes flicking to every guest as though she sought confirmation of her fears. Charles Fenton appeared restless, tapping his fingers against the table. Dr. Lydia March maintained her composed exterior, but Poirot's eyes caught a flicker of unease when she thought no one was observing. Reverend Blake muttered under his breath, occasionally glancing at the door, and Miss Edna Cray trembled at the slightest sound, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Poirot addressed the table with careful calm. Mess Amos, the night leaves many questions unanswered. But it also leaves traces, subtle, delicate, revealing. Hastings and I intend to walk the grounds again tonight. Perhaps the reeds will speak further truths. Lady Arabella's hands tightened over her napkin. You must be careful, Monsieur Poirot. Whoever is behind this, they are bold, perhaps dangerous. Poirot inclined his head. Fear, madam, is a useful companion. But it must not cloud the mind. Chapter 2, Interrogations and Clues. Poirot spent the morning interrogating the household further. Charles Fenton's nervous energy was becoming more apparent, his every gesture betraying impatience and irritation. Poirot noted the quick glance toward the marshes each time the conversation touched upon the lake. Charles, mon ami, Poirot said softly, are you afraid of the truth? Charles's hand froze mid-motion. I am not afraid, only irritated by all this talk of ghosts and whispers. It is absurd. Yet absurdity often masks danger, Poirot replied. We must consider every possibility, every motive. Tell me, do you know of any who might benefit from Lady Arabella's distress? Charles hesitated, his eyes narrowing, but said nothing. Poirot's gaze did not waver. Dr. Lydia March was next. In the quiet of the conservatory, Poirot watched her hands, the slight tension in her shoulders, and the subtle curl of her lip when she was asked directly about night walks near the lake. Doctor, Poirot began, you walk near the marshes at night. Do you seek solace, or is there another purpose? Her composure did not falter, yet her eyes flickered. Solace, she said, simply. I reflect on my patients, on life, on death. That is all. Poirot inclined his head, unconvinced. Sometimes reflection requires subtle interventions, n'est-ce pas? The reeds observe, doctor, but they do not judge. That is left to the living. Chapter 3, Discovery at the Lake. As twilight descended, Poirot and Hastings prepared for their second nocturnal inspection of the grounds. Lanterns cast long shadows, and the reeds swayed as if alive, their whispers more pronounced in the chill night air. The lake reflected the pale moonlight, a silver expanse broken by sudden movements in the marsh. Suddenly, a muffled sound, a low groan, came from the reeds. Poirot froze. Hastings, do you hear that? Hastings swallowed. Yes, Poirot. It's coming from there, the reeds. Poirot approached carefully. Amid the reeds, partially hidden, lay a small bundle wrapped in cloth. With a deft hand, he unwrapped it. Inside were documents, Henry Fenton's personal letters, carefully folded, and a small notebook with cryptic entries. One line caught Poirot's attention. The inheritance will not remain secret for long. Whoever seeks it will find danger, the reeds will witness the consequences. Poirot pocketed the documents. Hastings, the past is alive here. Secrets, fears, intentions, they all converge in this place. And someone is determined to protect them, with or without violence. Chapter 4, The Hidden Observer. As they retraced their steps toward the hall, Poirot noticed faint, irregular footprints in the mud. They did not match any of the household, boots larger than Charles's, sturdier than Dr. March's shoes. The footprints led toward a narrow, hidden pathway obscured by reeds, one Poirot had not seen before. He whispered to Hastings, "The culprit seeks concealment, yes, but leaves subtle invitations to discovery. The reeds, Hastings, are both accomplice and witness." Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, fleeting, indistinct, then gone. Hastings jumped. "Good heavens! Did you see that?" Poirot's eyes glimmered. "I saw movement, yes. And that movement carries intention. Observe, Hastings, the smallest gesture often betrays the greatest design." Chapter 5, Dinner of Tension. That evening's dinner was a study in suppressed emotion. Charles Fenton tapped his fingers impatiently. Dr. Lydia March's eyes were keenly watchful. Lady Arabella moved with anxious grace. Reverend Blake muttered prayers silently, and Miss Edna Cray trembled at every sound. Poirot observed quietly, noting the subtlest signals, the tightening of jaws, the darting of eyes, the smallest shifts of posture. It was all a language of secrets, and he read it fluently. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the east wing, a vase shattered, the sound startling in the silence. Poirot examined the shards carefully. Among them lay a small silver locket containing a miniature portrait of Henry Fenton. Behind him, a shadowy figure, unfamiliar, loomed in the background. "The plot thickens," Poirot murmured. "Someone wishes us to see, but not understand. The reeds will not reveal all, that is left to observation, deduction, and patience." Chapter 6, Midnight Revelations. Later that night, Poirot explored the east wing. The storm from earlier had left the corridors slick with moisture, and the air smelled faintly of damp wood and ink. In a small side room, he found a letter hidden behind a loose panel. "The secret of Stillwater lies not in the house, but in the reeds. Seek there, and you will find both the truth and danger. Trust none but your own eyes." Poirot folded the letter, his mind already racing. "Hastings, each clue leads to another. Each whisper in the reeds carries meaning. Patience, careful observation, and courage, these are our tools." As he stepped back into the hallway, a faint rustle came from the far end, the unmistakable sound of movement in the shadows. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Ah, the game grows more dangerous, Hastings. And the reeds, they shall witness the next step." Part 4, The Murmur's Hidden Truths. The night had fallen heavily over Stillwater Hall. Clouds obscured the moon, leaving the marshes in a shadowy gray where the reeds swayed with an almost sentient whisper. Each stalk seemed to lean toward the hall, as though conveying a message only the most observant could interpret. The lake lay like a sheet of black glass, reflecting the occasional glint of a lantern or the movement of unseen creatures. Hercule Poirot paced in his room, hands clasped behind his back, eyes sharp as they traced the patterns of shadow across the corridors below. Hastings sat in a chair, nervously twirling a handkerchief. "Hastings, observe carefully," Poirot said, his voice soft but precise. "The night conceals, but also reveals. Every sound, every movement, every whisper in the reeds is a piece of the puzzle. One must only have the courage to listen." Hastings shivered. "I have never felt a place so alive, Poirot. The reeds. I swear they are watching me." Poirot nodded. "Exactly, mon ami. The living may be hidden among them, but their intentions betray them. Soon, we shall see who walks these reeds by night and why." Chapter 1, Morning Tension. The following morning, the household gathered in the great hall. The air was thick with unspoken anxiety. Lady Arabella moved among her guests with a fragile grace, her eyes darting from Charles Fenton to Dr. Lydia March. Reverend Blake's voice was quiet, almost imperceptible, as he muttered a morning prayer. Miss Edna Cray avoided the gaze of everyone, trembling with every step. Poirot observed silently, noting the smallest gestures, Charles's restless tapping, Dr. March's subtle tightening of her jaw, Lady Arabella's constant scanning of the room, Edna Craye's shaking hands. "My friends," Poirot began, his tone calm yet commanding, "last night revealed many whispers, but few truths. Tonight, we must prepare ourselves. The reeds conceal a secret, yes, but the key is observation. Each one of you may hold a clue, whether knowingly or not." Charles laughed nervously. "You make it sound like we are all guilty of something, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot smiled faintly. "Not guilty, mon ami. Merely, involved. And involvement can take many forms." Chapter 2, The Hidden Alcove. Poirot insisted on inspecting the lake and its surrounding reeds in the late afternoon. The previous night's discovery of letters hidden in a small alcove had led him to suspect that the culprit used the marshes as a secret passage. He followed the faint footprints in the mud, noting the irregularities, a misstep here, a scuff there, a subtle indentation suggesting someone carrying a light load. Hastings pointed nervously at a cluster of reeds. "Poirot, I think, something moved there just now." Poirot crouched, examining the ground. "Yes, the footprint is fresh. Someone is observing us." "Hastings, the alcove is not just hiding letters, it hides intentions, messages, perhaps even a weapon. We must approach with care." As they reached the alcove, Poirot carefully examined the surrounding reeds. Hidden beneath a tangle of broken branches and reeds was a small, partially buried box. Inside, they found a notebook containing cryptic entries, observations about the household, and references to Lady Arabella's inheritance. Poirot whispered, "Hastings, the game grows more dangerous. The culprit knows the value of concealment, but even the smallest clue betrays their hand." Chapter 3, Confrontations and Suspicions. That evening, during dinner, tensions within the household reached a boiling point. Charles Fenton's restless energy seemed almost menacing. Dr. Lydia March watched each movement with sharp attention. Lady Arabella's hands shook slightly as she poured tea. Miss Edna Craye fidgeted nervously. Reverend Blake's voice was low, steady, as he murmured prayers under his breath. Poirot chose his moment carefully. "Mess Amos," he said, "the night brings revelations. Yet revelations require courage. Who among you walks the reeds by night? Who seeks to conceal the truth?" The room fell silent. Charles's hand froze on his teacup. Dr. March's eyes flickered. Lady Arabella's lips parted slightly as if to speak but then closed again. The tension was palpable. Poirot continued, his eyes piercing. "The reeds whisper, yes, but only to those who listen. And the footprints in the mud, the hidden letters, the notebook in the alcove, they all speak. Soon, we shall discover the truth." Chapter 4, Nightfall and the First True Danger. Night descended once more, heavy with mist and the scent of wet earth. Poirot and Hastings patrolled the grounds, lanterns in hand. The reeds whispered softly in the wind, an eerie symphony of movement. The lake reflected only darkness, yet occasional glimmers suggested movement in the shadows. Suddenly, a muffled shout rang out. Poirot froze. "Hastings! Listen!" A shadow darted among the reeds. Poirot approached slowly, his hand lightly touching the hilt of a small walking stick. Among the reeds lay a small bundle of letters, clearly moved by someone in a hurry. The papers were soaked but readable. The inheritance must not be revealed. Danger walks among the reeds. Observe carefully, or risk all. Poirot's lips pressed together. "Hastings, the stakes are higher than we imagined. This is no longer a game of whispers, someone here is prepared to take extreme measures." Chapter 5, The Unexpected Visitor. Later that night, Poirot and Hastings returned to the hall and discovered evidence of an intruder. The east wing door had been left ajar. Footprints led to the study. Poirot examined the scene carefully, dust disturbed, a small drawer opened, the faint scent of unfamiliar tobacco lingering in the air. Hastings whispered, "Poirot, someone was here. They've been searching the study." Yes, Hastings, Poirot murmured. And yet they were careless. The smallest traces are like threads waiting to be woven into the fabric of truth. Observe, fingerprints, footprints, misplaced papers, all speak to us. Among the scattered papers, Poirot found a map of the marshes, marked with small symbols and cryptic notes. It suggested hidden paths, secret observation points, and possibly a concealed meeting place near the reeds. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Hastings, the reeds conceal not only secrets, but strategy. Someone is orchestrating these events, watching, waiting, and preparing. The game grows more complex, and more dangerous. Chapter 6, A Clue in the Shadows. The wind rose suddenly, rattling the windows and bending the reeds like an army at attention. Poirot led Hastings to the lake's edge once more. A faint movement among the reeds caught his eye, a sleeve, perhaps a hat. The figure disappeared before Hastings could see it clearly. Poirot bent low, examining the mud. Fresh footprints, larger than any in the household, led from the lake toward the reeds and disappeared into the undergrowth. There, Poirot whispered. The culprit leaves a path, carefully, deliberately. Yet even the most careful hand leaves traces. Follow, observe, deduce. The reeds will whisper, Hastings, but only to those who know how to listen. A sudden gust of wind carried a faint whisper, almost intelligible, beware. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Ah, the messenger of fear grows bolder. And yet fear can be a tool, Hastings, for those who know its secrets. Part 5, The Reed's Silent Witness. The dawn broke slowly over Stillwater Hall, grey and heavy, the sky swollen with clouds that threatened rain yet again. The marshes surrounding the estate were shrouded in mist, the reeds swaying like a crowd of silent observers. Each blade, each stalk, seemed to bend toward the hall, whispering secrets in a language known only to the patient and the watchful. The lake glimmered faintly, dark and mysterious, a mirror reflecting the pale light of early morning, disturbed occasionally by a lone fish breaking its surface. Hercule Poirot stood at the tall drawing-room window, observing with meticulous care. His grey eyes scanned every movement in the reeds, every shadow along the lake, and even the tiniest ripple in the wind. Hastings, seated nearby, shivered at the eerie silence. Hastings, Poirot began softly, observe the stillness. The reeds speak tonight as much as any human voice, if one knows how to listen. Their whispers carry fear, caution, and intent. We must be vigilant. Hastings swallowed. It feels alive, Poirot, the reeds, the lake, the mist. I feel as if it is all watching us. Poirot nodded. Indeed, mon ami. And when one learns to interpret these signs, the silent witnesses reveal the truth hidden from ordinary eyes. Chapter 1, Morning Unease. Breakfast in the great hall was heavy with tension. Lady Arabella moved among her guests with nervous grace, her pale face a mask of composure. Charles Fenton's restless energy was almost unbearable, his fingers drummed incessantly on the polished table. Dr. Lydia March maintained her calm, but Poirot noted the subtle furrow of her brow, the slight tension in her jaw. Reverend Blake whispered prayers under his breath, and Miss Edna Cray trembled at every sound. Poirot spoke, calm but commanding, Mess Amos, yesterday revealed whispers, but not truths. The reeds conceal the facts, yet they leave traces, traces for those patient enough to observe. Tonight, we will seek them. Charles laughed nervously. And how exactly do we seek them? Walk into the marshes and hope the whispers guide us. Poirot's eyes glinted. No, mon ami. Observation, patience, and deduction, these are our guides. Every footprint, every rustle, every shadow carries meaning. The reeds will witness all, and we must witness them. Lady Arabella's hands shook slightly. I fear for what may happen, Monsieur Poirot. Whoever walks among the reeds is bold, perhaps dangerous. Poirot inclined his head. Fear is a tool, madam, if one wields it carefully. Chapter 2, Afternoon Reconnaissance. In the afternoon, Poirot led Hastings through the marshes. Every step left a mark in the mud, and every disturbance in the reeds seemed like a deliberate signal. Poirot examined each footprint meticulously, noting the irregularities. "Observe, Hastings," he whispered. "The footprints are deliberate, cautious, yet hurried. Someone wishes to be noticed yet remain unseen. Note the scuffs, light load, hurried steps, careful placement of each foot. A practiced hand, or someone who fears discovery." Hastings shivered. "I can barely keep up, Poirot." "How do you notice so much?" "Observation, Hastings. The smallest details tell the largest stories. Here," Poirot pointed toward a slight rise in the reeds, "is a vantage point. Someone has watched Stillwater Hall from this location, perhaps many times." Poirot also discovered a small alcove partially concealed by reeds. Inside were letters and a notebook, cryptic but revealing clues about inheritance disputes and secret meetings. Each word seemed to whisper a warning, each line a potential key to the unfolding mystery. Chapter 3, Dinner of Tension. That evening, the household gathered for dinner. Every gesture, every glance was heavy with suspicion. Charles Fenton's fingers drummed relentlessly. Dr. March's eyes studied the room with precise calculation. Lady Arabella's hands trembled. Miss Edna Cray avoided all eyes, while Reverend Blake whispered under his breath. Poirot addressed the table. "Mess Amos, secrets abound here. The reeds conceal, yes, but they cannot hide all. Someone among us moves carefully, with purpose, yet leaves traces. Observation will reveal them." Suddenly, a loud crash from the east wing startled everyone. A vase lay shattered, and among the shards lay a silver locket containing a miniature portrait of Henry Fenton, with an unfamiliar shadow behind him. "The plot deepens," Poirot murmured. "Someone wishes to be seen, yet not understood. The reeds are silent witnesses, but we are not deaf to their message." Chapter 4, Midnight Discovery. Later that night, Poirot explored the east wing. The corridors smelled of damp wood and ink. Behind a loose panel, he found a letter. "The secret of Stillwater lies not in the house, but in the reeds. Seek there, and you will find truth and danger alike. Trust only your eyes." Poirot pocketed the letter. "Hastings, the night holds danger. Secrets, intentions, and threats converge in the reeds. Patience, observation, and courage are our only guides." A faint rustle came from the far end of the corridor. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Ah, patience, Hastings. The next revelation approaches. And it will not be gentle." Chapter 5, Clues in the Marsh. Poirot returned to the marshes before dawn. The fog was thick, almost tangible, clinging to the reeds and water. Every sound, the squelch of mud, the rustle of reeds, the distant call of a bird, seemed magnified. Footprints, partially submerged in water, suggested someone had been observing the hall at night. Poirot crouched, examining the impressions. "Notice, Hastings, these prints are larger than Charles Fenton's, sturdier than any household member. They lead to a small clearing in the reeds, possibly a rendezvous or observation point." Hastings whispered, "Poirot, do you think it's the same person as before?" Poirot's grey eyes gleamed. "I am certain, Hastings. And the path they leave is deliberate. It is a challenge, an invitation, or a warning. We must follow carefully."